The miracle in the desert, when heaven sent a fountain of mercy. Sometimes God performs miracles quietly, not in front of a crowd, not under the bright lights of a church, but in the middle of nowhere, with no witnesses except the desperate heart of one who cried out for him. Tonight, I want to tell you a miracle that almost no one in the world knows. A miracle hidden in the desert. A miracle that proves. When hope collapses and every door closes, God does not. This is the story of the unexpected fountain. It was the summer of 1983, in a remote stretch of the Sahara, where the air burns the skin and the sun feels like a hammer pressing down from heaven. A young missionary nurse named Elena Morales was traveling with a small humanitarian team to reach a nomadic tribe that had been struck by a sudden outbreak of cholera. Elena was only 27, soft-spoken, deeply compassionate, and carrying within her a faith forged through years of quiet prayer. The journey had been planned carefully, but the desert rarely respects human plans. Halfway through their route, a violent sandstorm swallowed their convoy. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Their trucks rattled and shook. One vehicle broke down entirely. A second overturned, and before long the team had no choice but to stop and take shelter behind scattered dunes. When the storm finally passed, they realized something terrifying. They were lost. Far off the marked route, GPS wasn't available, radio signals were dead, and worst of all, their water supply had been destroyed. Only one canister survived, holding barely a few gulps. The desert does not forgive dehydration, not in the punishing heat of early afternoon. Panic slipped into the voices of the team. Arguments broke out. One man insisted they try walking, another said they should stay put. But Elena, normally quiet, suddenly spoke with remarkable steadiness. "We pray," she said simply, "and we stay together." They gathered in a small circle. Some prayed with trembling lips, some cried. Some weren't sure God was even listening, but they prayed anyway, because when you have nothing left, prayer becomes everything you have. Hours passed. The sun grew harsher. People grew weaker. Thirst carved lines deep into their faces. As the team drifted into a haze of despair, Elena felt something stirring inside her, a subtle nudge. Not a voice, not a command, but a gentle interior pull, like the faintest breeze brushing against her heart. "Walk," it seemed to whisper. She didn't understand why. She didn't know where. But the pull was persistent, soft but certain. She told the team what she felt. Most of them dismissed it. Heat delirium, they thought. But one older volunteer named Joseph nodded slowly. "Sometimes God speaks like that," he murmured. "Go, we'll follow." And so they walked, 20 meters, 50. Some stumbled, some nearly collapsed. The desert stretched endlessly, no shade, no sign of life, no reason, humanly speaking, to keep going. But Elena kept walking, her heart trembling with each step. Then, something impossible happened. A small patch of ground ahead looked darker than the surrounding sand. She blinked, thinking it was a trick of the light. But as she approached, she saw the faintest glimmer, like liquid reflecting the sun. She dropped to her knees. The ground was damp. She pressed deeper. Sand crumbled away, and water, cold, clear water, began to seep up between her fingers. Joseph gasped. Others stared, speechless. In the middle of the Sahara, one of the driest places on earth, a spring was pushing upward. One of the engineers later insisted they were nowhere near known underground streams. No aquifer, no natural well, no geological explanation. But in that moment, nobody cared about explanations. They cared about survival. They dug with their hands, then with metal scraps from their broken truck. Within minutes, a small pool formed, enough to drink, enough to fill their containers, enough to cool their burning skin, enough to live. The water was shockingly cold, like it came from a place untouched by the desert's heat, and extraordinarily clean. The microbiologist on the team would later confirm. It contained 0 contaminants, an impossibility for groundwater in that region. The team stayed by the miraculous spring until an aerial search party found them 2 days later, alive, hydrated, and deeply changed. Then something even stranger happened. When authorities returned the next week to study the spring, it was gone. Completely gone. The sand was dry. No sign water had ever been there. But every person in that missionary team signed a sworn statement describing exactly what had happened. Years later, 5 of them would report experiencing profound conversions. 2 entered religious life. 1 became a deacon. And Elena, the young nurse who followed the quiet nudge, spent the rest of her life serving impoverished communities. Before she died in 2019, she gave a simple testimony. I did not find the water. I only followed a whisper of God, and He led us to what only heaven could provide. What happened in that desert wasn't just a miracle of water. It was a miracle of guidance, a miracle of listening, a miracle of trusting the whisper when everything around screams, impossible. How often do we feel lost in a personal desert? A desert of fear, or sickness, or loneliness, or financial struggle, or spiritual dryness. How often do we feel like there's no water left? Nothing to cling to, no strength to continue, no idea where God is. But the miracle teaches us this. God does His greatest work in places where human hope cannot survive. He doesn't always send a booming voice. More often, He sends a whisper. A small interior pull toward goodness, toward forgiveness, toward courage, toward Him. And if we follow it, even with trembling steps, we may discover a source of grace we never knew existed. God can create water where there has never been water. He can create a path where there has never been a path. He can create hope where every human calculation says hope is over. My friend, if you feel like you're standing in the middle of your own desert tonight, remember this. God's silence is not God's absence, and His whisper is louder than despair. You may not see a spring yet. You may not understand where you're being led, but keep walking. Keep praying. Keep listening. Because the same God who brought water out of dry sand can bring life out of your deepest sorrow. And one day you will look back and say, I thought I was lost, but God was leading me to a miracle.